Hello and welcome to TidyX episode 33. TidyX is a screencast where we go through and explain how our code works. My name is Ellis Hughes. I am a statistical programmer, and you can find me on Twitter at Ellis_Hughes.
And my name is Patrick Ward, and I do data analysis in sport. You can find me on Twitter at OSPPatrick. You can find both of us on Twitter at tidy_explained, or you can hit us up at tidy.explained@gmail.com with questions, comments, ideas for future screencasts, etc., etc.
Etc. All right, so this week's Tidy Tuesday data set is on beer, which I think we both like.
Yeah.
So this data set is specifically on beer awards from the Great American Beer Festival. So a panel of judges judge beers across the country and give them gold, silver, bronze medals from there. So cool.
Sounds like a great job.
Yeah, sounds like a tough job. I mean, I'll volunteer, I guess, if you know anybody at the Great American Beer Festival, if you want somebody to drink some beer, I can find some time.
I wonder if you get to consume it. They probably taste it and spit it, I would guess.
Maybe.
Otherwise, by the end of the day,
you'd be sloshed.
everybody's getting a high grade because you're just hammered.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a good beer. It's got notes of beer.
Amazing.
Yeah. But everyone did a lot of great visualizations. People looked like they had a lot of fun with this data set. But one that we thought was kind of unique and something we actually hadn't covered here at TidyX was from Richard. I'm not even going to attempt your last name. I'm so sorry.
Bamattre?
Sure. But I thought this visualization was really cool. It was super clean. I liked the dark gray background. You had the title in the yellow there that was super clear. Used state. You showed it by state, and then you colored all of the states by the top beer awards style, and you actually set the colors to be pretty close to the actual color of the beer. So I thought that was pretty fun, and I'm definitely a porter and stout drinker myself. To see Washington in that zone there made me happy.
I like West Virginia has none because that's moonshine in country. Nobody's drinking beer there. Moonshiners.
There we go. And then there's a couple places that make some funky beers, so they're kind of in the something else category. A lot of lagers, which from what I understand, making a good lager is difficult. Like a lot of people drink a lot of lagers, like Coors and in Pabst and what I think Pabst is.
Are those considered a lager or pilsner? I
don't know. They're getting grouped here in this.
Yeah, I always get confused. I always thought they were a pilsner, but maybe I'm wrong.
But anyway, just to see a lot of that kind of popping up around there. Not many IPAs, which I'm happy with that. I'm not an IPA person.
You're not?
No, I hate IPAs.
Man, IPA is my favorite.
You're just wrong.
Yeah. I can't believe I thought Washington would have more, but maybe not.
I would have.
Is lion's share, isn't it?
Yeah, California is just they're the only ones that are IPAs. California, you can keep your IPAs. Send me all your porters and stouts.
No, we need an IPA.
But yeah, so Richard very kindly shared his code on GitHub. We reached out to him and said, "Hey, you mind if we go through and explain this for TidyX?" He's like, "Go for it." So we copied this into our R session, and we will explain how his code works because we want to make sure everyone understands how this great visualization was made.
All right.
So he's got it as an R script, which is perfectly fine. He's got his header there kind of explaining what Tidy Tuesday is working on. He's got his name on it, his Twitter handle. So that's a good way to start your R script, is orienting whoever's looking at it. Next, he's got the libraries that he uses, so Tidy Tuesday R. Always good to see that. Tidyverse for your data manipulation needs. Janitor to help you clean up some stuff. It's got some cool functionalities for that. Extra font for importing some unique fonts. And then a package we haven't seen before, but I suspect this is the package that made this visualization structure, which is statebins, which looks like it's available from Bob Brutus, just based off this URL here. So Bob just makes.
I feel like there's a few state bins too.
Yes, there is. There's a couple.
Yeah.
There are a couple packages that do similar things. Actually,
Yeah, there were a few different. Yeah, there's a few different ones that I found, other than this one here, that he explicitly used. But yeah, there were a few options for state bins.
yeah. So also there's one from Ryan Hathan called GeoFacet. That's also pretty great to use as well. Then he's got the library ggtext, which is I think from Klaus Wilk's group to help add Markdown into your ggplot too. So let's load all these guys before I move forward. All right, so we've got all that loaded in. Now we're going to load the data using Tidy Tuesday R, Tues data. And cool, so we've got all that. And so now immediately Richard starts going into some data cleanup. Patrick, you want to take us through this?
Yeah, so
Here, I'll zoom in a little bit too. So it's
there we go. So similar to all of the screencasts that we've done, you always start with a little bit of cleanup. So he explicitly pulls from the Tues data the Beer Awards data set. I think there was only one data set this week anyway.
yeah, only one.
Yeah, so he gets that, he calls that data explicitly, and then he begins his cleanup here. So obviously mutate is going to add new columns to the end of an already used data set that we have. So he's got state. He's using the toUpper function here. This is, I think, from stringr package, which comes with
I think
tidyverse.
it's base, actually.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
toUpper is going to basically take all of the words in that string. There you go, base. toUpper will take all the words in that string, and it will turn them to uppercase. So toLower will do the opposite. And I think, what is it called? toTitle should put the first letter. I believe it's called toTitle.
I think toTitle is that one is from Stringer.
Oh, maybe that's
but
right.
But toLower and toUpper are from BaseR.
Yeah, there you go. So he's gonna put them. He's gonna put the states to capitals, as we would as you would see them on a map, and then he's going to create a metal column. So metal. The factor level, he's basically just doing this to set the factor levels to gold, silver, and bronze. So the obvious 1, 2, and 3 positioning that we would get. And then finally, and he does another mutate here, he's creating this thing called style, which is the different categories. So basically what he wants to do is he wanted to find the top 10 categories and then sort of just lump everything else together. So he uses string detect to basically look through the category. And the reason why he's using string detect is because he wants to, this is from the stringr package, wants to detect within the string, category string, he wants to detect certain things. So this thing here, like lager, and then the vertical line means or Pilsner, or Pilsners, or Bock. So anytime that the string detect function looks at that column for that single row and it finds one of those 4 values, he wants it to return this little title called lager/Pilsner/Bock. And so he goes through and he basically does that for a number. So Indian Pale Ale, he obviously abbreviates to IPA, and Pale Ale and Amber get, so Pale Ale or Amber get squashed together. He does this for basically 10 of the most typical kind of beer categories. And then everything else at the bottom, it says true. So anytime it's not one of those 10 above, you're just going to call it something else. So he's just created sort of a general style that's basically everything else. And so his hashtag there says, his comment says lots of sub-styles group into major beer style. Okay, so that's what he did. So we'll go ahead and we'll run this. And now we've got a beer category. So you can see that this category is every row of the data. And now all he's done is he's added those extra 3 columns at the end. The category, the year, and the style. Actually, category was already the year and the style. And metal, you can see now, is an ordered factor. So because he set order to equal true. So now it's ordered as gold, silver, bronze. Okay. So then he does a little bit of exploratory data analysis to kind of see what's there before getting into his plots. So counting the major beer styles, obviously we're going to have the largest value in the something else category. You can see that these came out alphabetical. If you set sort equals true, they'll come out sorted top to bottom as N. So highest to lowest. So something else will come out on top. And then as we saw in the plot, lager, pilsners, and bocks tended to be extremely popular. Porters, blah blah blah, down and through.
Yes. If it wasn't so early, I'd probably have a porter opened up right now.
I'm actually drinking a beer right now, even though it's okay. So the most common unclaimed beers. So this is that something else column and or something else category. All he wanted to do was see like what kind of fell in there. And here he uses sort equal true, and he says just give me the top 50, so we can see most of the something else. The highest percentage of the something else is coming from the golden or blonde ales, followed by the barley wine style ale.
It's a very good beer, barley wine. It's very good. I do suggest if you haven't had it to have it. Find a good place and ask if they suggest having their barley wine. It's a very unique experience. Very unique tasting beers, I think.
There you go.
If you like strong beers, though.
Who doesn't like strong beers? So there's the something else category. So he does a little bit more exploratory data analysis here before plotting. So this one here is he's just trying to find out which states are going to have a top beer. That's something else. So basically, are any of the states sort of more commonly going to have this something else category? And so there we can see the top. He says print n equals 50. There's only 10, I think.
Yeah.
And he uses a function that I don't know if we've used before, which is slice. Mm-hmm. So he starts out, he takes the beer category and he counts by 3 different variables: state, category, and style. And then he's going to group everything by state, and he's going to arrange the data by state, counting negative n means descending, right? I think he could have typed DESC as well to make it explicit.
That would be a little bit clearer about what you're trying to do, but the negative trick works clearly. Yeah. So there's more typing involved, but it's, it's semantics. Type less, be clearer, be less clear, but more terse. It's all about your style of programming.
So if you ran just that, right, you'll see, for example, Arkansas there, we've got 10 beers showing up. And so what he's going to use is slice 1 is basically saying in that group by, so we're grouping by state, we're arranging by state descending from N, just slice out the first row of every state. So slice out the top one. So for example, if you ran it up to that slice 1, we should see Arkansas smoked flavored beer as the something else come up.
So it's going to do it for all the states because
that's right. But it'll come up. I'm saying for Arkansas,
that first one, yeah.
Exactly. Boom. So there we see the top something else beers in every single state. All right, cool.
Yeah, and so it looks like Arkansas makes a smoke-flavored beer, and that is their most awarded, which is interesting and also very intriguing.
Yeah, I imagine it being like when I was in high school, I used to work at a grocery store, and they had liquid smoke for like barbecues, and some woman dropped the bottle. Yeah, she dropped the bottle, I remember, on the aisle, and it shattered everywhere, and it just reeked of like basically like cookout smoke for at least 2 or 3 days. It was
interesting.
So I imagine it tasting like that. That's all I can think of.
Well, TidyX doesn't have any sponsors, so any beer people, if you want to, we're accepting sponsors. So we've sliced it, so now we get a single record for each state. Yeah. And then he filters to keep only the cases where style was something else. And the print n equals 50, just to make sure that if somehow there were all 50 states had a top awarded beer style that wasn't one of the categories he'd made, which is, highly unlikely, get all of them still and get to see them. But in this case, we only have 10. So I have a friend that's gluten intolerant, so I'm sure she'd appreciate that Vermont, as the gluten-free beer, is their most awarded something else beer.
Gluten-free beer is not bad.
No, it's
I've had
not.
had it a number of times, and I don't mind it. Really can't even tell the difference. I don't really
Yeah,
notice.
exactly. There's some really good ones here in Seattle too, like
Yeah,
Ghost Fish.
Oregon had some good ones.
Yeah, and then classic saison. That's interesting to see. That's categorized as something else. I guess he didn't like call them out explicitly in the categories there, but because saison is not an unheard of beer, but I guess it doesn't get awarded much.
Mm.
Huh? But all right, so we'll step forward. He does actually the same steps here that we were doing that he's doing before the ungroup. So yeah, this is exactly the same, but now so this is exactly the same as what we just discussed. But now he adds in a record for West Virginia based on the comment. West Virginia didn't have any awards.
Moonshine.
And then applies a factor relevel because style, if you recall, he converted into a factor, but now he wants to set an order. And this is later on for actual plotting purposes. This is not to say that lager pilsners and bocks are better than wheat beer or something like that. This was simply for plotting later on, I'm assuming. Maybe Richard likes lagers, pilsners, and bocks. So applies this, and so then we'll get out a data frame that is one record per state with the style as a factor.
Yep.
And so we got this warning here saying it's complaining about not seeing the levels for sour or red ale. So if you take a quick look at the top there's style table. I can finish out typing here. You'll see that sour actually is not, or red ale, it's not one of the levels that appears here. So you wouldn't have known this going in necessarily, which is why it makes sense to leave the code like this. But this is saying that no sours or red ales were the top awarded beer for that state. However, it was one of the categories we had earlier, so it totally makes sense to leave that in there. And that's just like situationally knowing when to ignore warnings.
Exactly. I was just going to say the warning isn't an error, but the warning, R is just barking at you that it couldn't find something, and you have to just, like you just did, you write the table. You want to look at the data to make sure, like, wait a minute, does this make sense, or did I do something wrong? Is there a reason why this isn't happening? And clearly, it makes sense in this case, so we're going to ignore it and continue to move on.
Mm-hmm. All right, so then we go through and actually create the plot here. He did make a point when I emailed him to say that he went through and figured out the beer color. So I guess we'll get to that in a second. But the colors that he used were borrowing colors from an analysis that was performed at this URL here. So if you want to learn more about that, go to this URL and learn more about beer colors.
There you go.
Wanted to make sure to bring that up because I think that's pretty cool and fun that he actually went through and took the effort to do that. So then we're going to take the top styles data set or data frame, which is one row per state. We're going to throw it into our GG plot. We're going to set the aesthetics for the rest of the plot where the state aesthetic is state, which, makes sense, and is now setting the fill to be the style. So the top awarded beer style is going to be the fill for whatever we end up plotting next. So then we go into the geom, which is the geom state bins, which is from the state bins package, which is, how that's creating the body of the plot that we're going to be doing here. It's going to be inheriting these aesthetics here, so state and fill. Then he's going to be doing some styling specifically for the state bins themselves. He's setting the radius, so normally they'd be complete squares. He's radiusing them to be 5 points so that it's more rounded. I think that's just an aesthetics thing.
Yeah.
Don't remove NAs, so keep beers without any, or keep states that had no beers. Set the border size to be a thickness of 2. Otherwise, the size is 1, and set the border call to be this hex color, which will become important in a little bit.
And that function is going to organize the page for you.
Yes.
in a sort of, it's not exactly the US map because you'll see the states are lined, but it's in a pseudo US map, which is great because if you were going to do this on your own in ggplot, you'd have a massive amount of code to organize all of those little boxes.
Exactly. Yeah, so they handle everything in the backend for you. Applies the theme statebins, which is also from the statebins package, and applies the base family. So the base family text type to band shrift. And then this is where he actually goes through and assigns the colors based on the beer type. So scale, fill, manual. So he's manually assigning the colors to fill with. And because if you note further up, he actually set the factor levels to be here. So he can use that to be in the same order here. That's why you'd use factors. Factors for plotting purposes are for setting the ordering in which you want a categorical variable to show up. Otherwise, it'll show up alphabetically.
Yeah.
Based on how ggplot figures or how R converts characters into factors by default. So he's assigning all these colors in the same order that the factor order was in. So first lagers and IPAs and pale ales, Belgian, porters. Something else he set as green, so because he didn't know. And then if there are no beers, he sets the color to be dark gray.
I can't remember, but if he didn't set the factor levels, like for example, that first hex code that you've highlighted right there, if he would have typed in the actual quote lager / pilsner / whatever, and then equals that hex code, I can't remember if you don't set the factor level and you did that for each one of these colors, would it come out in the legend in the order in which you typed the actual equals this hex code equals that hex code? I can't remember what happens when you do that.
I think it's breaks or something like that. There's another argument here.
There's a way to do it.
There is a way to do it without actually setting the factors. I think factors are just a lot easier to do, which is why I like doing it that way. But yeah, if you can't do it, if you can't set it into a factor before, there are ways inside the scale or scale fill, scale color, scale whatever, to set it in there.
Yeah, or maybe there's like a legend order or something like that within there's something. Yeah, I can't remember. I remember doing this once before, but yeah.
And then sets the name of the legend? So that basically the name of the legend, in this case, because there's only one legend that'll be produced, and that's color. Overall beer styles. Next, use the labs function to pass the title, which is Great American Beers. Subtitle, here is using GG text to basically be able to style the text using HTML, more or less. Then adding the caption, Tidy Tuesday, his Twitter handle, and then where the data comes from, and then sets his theming, which is setting the plot background to be the same color as he set the border colors, so they basically disappear, which is kind of a cool trick. Setting the text color by default to be white. The legend title, get rid of that. Legend position, place it on the right. Setting the removing the background color of the legend key. Plot title to be centered, and the plot subtitle also to be centered with HJust. So let's run all that. We know we can ignore those warnings because we got this plot output, and there we go. That is the plot that Richard made.
That's awesome. Look at that, cool.
Looks
really
super clean. Love the way it came out. Thank you so much, Richard, for letting us explain how your code worked. I'm excited to see how other people start using this package and using some of the lessons they've learned here. Please comment down below if this, how you've used this in the past or how you plan on using it in the future.
Cool.
All right, so we had a lot of fun with this one, and if you couldn't figure this out, Patrick and I like beer. So what we did is we continued down the beer theme, but this time we wanted to actually scrape some of our own data. We've talked about scraping in the past, but we wanted to go a little bit more in depth on how we did this with a very simple example and discuss a little bit of etiquette when you're scraping things. So And this will all be available on our GitHub page, the bioengineer/TidyX. And we have a README that should be able to point you to wherever you're trying to go to see our code. But first we load rvest, which is the package to help us scrape data from websites. We've got library tidyverse, which is our data manipulation. We're using statebins again because we thought that was pretty cool. Some patchwork to help kind of reorganize the GG objects. There's some ggforce and geofacet, but that was something I tried to do. We're going to kind of go over that very quickly because it did not go the way I anticipated it, and I wasn't able to get that done in time for this. But I'll hopefully pick up that later. So let's load these in there. So we're actually going to be scraping from the brewersassociation.org, and we're pulling some statistics and data they have on state craft beer stats. So let's quickly hop over to their website, this is the URL we were at. And so what we wanted to do is we saw this, and we thought that these cards are really cool. I actually wanted to try to see if we could recreate this with ggplot. Decided that was going to be a little bit too hard for us to do. But what they do have is this is all HTML right here. So what this means is we can scrape out this data and make this available for everybody. So when you're going to scrape a website, the first thing you should do is check the robots.txt to make sure you can scrape. That's at least the polite thing to do. But when you're actually if that's okay, what you're going to want to do is I tend to use, I know some people like to use Selector Gadget or something like that to go through and try to figure out how they're supposed to be pulling stuff out.
Yeah, there's really two ways to find what you want on the page. I've used both. The first is this way, where you inspect the actual page, and this kind of shows you the underlying HTML of that page.
Yeah.
The Selector Gadget is a website where it's actually a tool, right? You download your Selector Gadget, you would go to this website, you would click Selector Gadget, and the tool will then basically highlight the page. And as you cursor around, it highlights exactly like you're doing, what you're looking at. And in the bottom right, it'll deposit, for example, whatever you're highlighted on, it'll deposit that bit of code. So it'll deposit div class, or it actually would, with what you're highlighted there, it would deposit .state container.
Yeah. So I tend to not do this when I'm doing web scraping. This is the way I approach it. I right click, open up the inspection to open up DevTools, and it'll take you to the actual container that you've selected or right clicked on. So that's kind of a good way to kind of dive into the HTML and see immediately what you were clicking on. But immediately I noticed that they repeat this class stat container, which makes sense because it's containing all the stats. And so if you look at here, this is the Alabama. Then if you look at the next stat container, that is for Arkansas. Then the next one is so they've reorganized this for some reason. I don't get the ordering.
And hitting that drop-down arrow, then that gives you the other bits of information, right?
Exactly. So I used Alabama as like my template because everything else was ordered the same way. So I looked at this next. So under stat container, there's a div called state stats. And so this is the statistics for the state. And it's got some styling around that. Then it's got a ton of named IDs. So these are the IDs for each of the divs. So this means that we can, once we get down to the stat container, we can then pull out the state header and pull out Alabama. Then we can go into per state, look at the total div, and pull out the count and the rank. Then we can go into per capita and pull out the rank there as well.
And just an FYI, most websites are not this neatly ordered.
No. Thank you very much, whoever created brewersassociation.org, for making your website sane. And this is why we're actually spending a little bit of time to explain how to get into this, because normally it's just a hot mess.
Maybe we should pick a week and explain a messy one.
We can do
I
that.
guess the NBA shot chart one was kind of messy.
That one, that one
That would
was,
be a good one to review. That one was kind of sloppy
yeah.
for us.
Yeah, and then they've got an ID for economic impact where they have the intro there, which isn't super useful. The total economic impact, and I'm assuming that's millions of dollars. They maybe want to expand on that. Million economic impact is not really it doesn't make much sense. And then per capita. So as you can see, we can kind of like dig down into the HTML and pull out the data that we care about. So what we did is we have code that does that. So exactly how I explained it, I will close this out because we don't need that. Go away. All right, so what I did is I scraped their website there. So this is all the HTML that existed. And this has to be HTML that exists before any JavaScript runs. If it's stuff that exists after JavaScript runs, there has to be some other stuff you have to do that I'm not super familiar with. But we will cross that bridge later because thankfully it already exists. And then read HTML actually downloads it for us. Now we've got all the HTML that was on that website in our computer as this HTML document object. Next we use HTML nodes to identify all the nodes, so all the divs that were .stat container. And so now we've got all 50 states.
Yeah, if you were just to run the beer HTML piped with that, you'll see. So obviously it truncates there at 20, but you can see Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, so it's got it all nicely organized for us. And then I'm gonna throw it. Actually, this is probably not the best way to do it, but it's if I noticed that they're all ordered the same way, this is how I tend to like to do it. Is I tend to throw it into a per map. Because then it just loops over all the contents there for us. And so what I called state div is essentially one record here. And then what I did is I went through and pulled out the HTML attributes data ID, which is this record here. So I had the abbreviated state name, and then here, why don't I quickly grab state div out of this?
I think you need a. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Now we've got state div. So now I've got it. The inner contents now of that card. I wanted to pull out the HTML node that is h1, which is like the header, and then convert it to text. So now we've got the attribute, the state name. And then just as we talked about before, we're going to go into the class per state, pull out the total div, pull out the counts, and convert that to text. And that gives us the total number of craft breweries that are in Alabama. Then we go into per state again, .total, and this time we'll pull out .rank to get the rank out of the states. So this is ranked 37th. In the US. Same idea. So we're just kind of iterating through all of this. This is probably not the most efficient way. You probably could have put this into a function and just kind of had it churn stuff out for us. But
function, isn't it? It's in function within the map DFR. It is.
Yeah, exactly. So we step through that. We pull out the number of craft breweries, ranks, per capita, and rank, and do that all the way across. And then we finally generate this big tibble that's got all that information for us right there. Then I throw it into a pivot longer. So as you can see, this is wide data at this point. So we've got one row per state, and it's got all this information for us. And that's not efficient. That's not how you want to store your data. So we want to make it longer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use pivot longer. I'm going to get all the columns that end with value or rank, which are all the records that we have here. And I'm converting those to longer. But if you look, they've got a lot of information here. It's breweries, it's N or PC, and it's value or its rank. So I'm going to separate them with underscore. So this is like one of the key new features, not new because it's been around for a while, but the key features of pivot longer versus gather is you can say split on underscore, and that way it'll split up brewery. this record into breweries, N, and value. And now we're going to assign the names to measure, reference, and type. So breweries will go into measure, reference will be N, and type will be value. Or econ N rank, measure will be populated with econ, reference will be populated with N, and type will be rank. And now we're going to take all those values that were wide and convert them into a column that populates a column called value. So now it's gone from this wide format to this really long format. But I actually want to make it a little bit wide again too. So we're going to take the names from type, which are rank or N, and spread those out. And take the values from values. That way we end up with columns of state abbreviation, measure, and reference. So breweries, N or PC, and two columns, N or, value or rank. Sorry, that's a lot of detail in there, but we're at 35 minutes, so I'm trying to make sure that we, keep moving forward on this.
It's something like you could literally pull out just this one little function component and sit there and work on it for about 30 minutes each line to sort out what it's doing. But
Exactly. But as you can see now, we end up with state data. So we have 6 rows per state. Each we have measures, breweries, econ, and prod, reference, N or PC, and then we have a column for value and a column for rank. There we go. And so now I do. Sorry, go for it.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Oh, now it's a bit of kind of data cleaning to go through here.
Yeah.
So we got beer. We've got we're creating a beer data frame from the state data that was just scraped. So he's got to mutate. So the first one, measure, is similar to the web page showed. You had different things that you want to define. So measure breweries, we're going to call them craft breweries. Measure econ, we're going to call it economic impact. Measure prod, just call it production, so that the names are really clear and not abbreviated. We create a reference value here, again with case when. So anytime it says N, which is a count value, call it total. Anytime it says PC, it's going to be per capita, and then a units value. So again, just trying to make the abbreviations more explicit. So in the measures column, anytime it says craft breweries, call it total. Anytime it says the economic impact, call it millions of dollars. Anytime it says production, production and reference equals total, call it barrels. And anytime the measure is production and the reference is per capita, call it gallons. So the way in which these things are measured.
Yes, we're measuring beer production in gallons.
Yeah. Typical Saturday
per
night.
person.
And then you're going to do a little bit of some regex type of expression here as numeric gsum. So if we look at that rank column, we've got parenthesis ranks space 37th. So it looks like you have some regex to remove the parentheses and retain the digits within the parentheses. Is that the D plus within the parentheses?
Exactly. So what I'm doing here is
there, and then you have the commented backslashes for the spaces, right?
Yeah. So this is going to a period star will grab it's greedy, so it'll grab as much as it can, and then this until it sees until it sees a space, which will be this right there. And then I'm like, okay, grab all the digits that exist there and have it create its own group. So this is weird regex stuff that's going on here. But what I'm saying is capture these two numbers here and keep those and set them aside as their own group. Then continue on and grab the rest of the string. And so now when I use the //1, what I'm telling the regular expression is, okay, grab this entire string and keep group 1 and throw away everything else.
Yep.
And so now in group 1 is the digits.
Yep.
So it's only going to keep those. And then
value equals readr parse number value. So now you're just converting that number. Oh, you're converting the value number to an actual numeric because it's got some comma values and things like that at times.
Exactly. So yeah, it's got some weird structures. If I were just to have called as numeric onto it on that, it would have complained because it doesn't know how to deal with commas or stuff like that. So parse number is a smarter way to do that sort of thing. And so now we've got this beer data set that's got all this information here, and we've actually saved it in our data set or in our repo. So if you want to go through and create a better visualization than we did or than I did, please do it and tag us.
Have it. Have at it.
That'd be a lot of fun. All right. So now what I go through is this is like the main visualization, and we use state bins as well because I thought that was pretty cool. But this time I'm going to be using all this information that we scraped off here. So we're going to pull out from beer, we're going to filter to keep production and total. So the total beer produced for each state. Going to send it into the ggplot where the aesthetic is going to use state and then fill based on the value. So it's going to be filling the cell based off of the total production that it has from craft breweries. Identical state bins because I was lazy and I copied that. And I set the same state bins, but this time I'm using a scale fill. So now I'm going to have it set the colors between two, or set the fill colors between two different points, pale ale and brown ale. I thought that was fun. So I got two different hex colors that look similar to pale ale and brown ale. And then set the title label to be overall beer production total. So we're going to run that real quick. So here we go. So this is the overall total craft beer production. Unsurprisingly, California, I think California is the highest, but Pennsylvania is lighter. So Pennsylvania produces the most beer total compared to everyone in the States. And it's not even close. Everyone else is super dark compared to Pennsylvania and California. So,
yeah, Colorado is a little light, and North Carolina,
Oregon, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida. But like Pennsylvania is just like light. And then everyone else. So wow. Bravo, Pennsylvania.
Way to go.
Alright, so we scrolled up a bit. So then we do the same sort of thing here, but we're doing it per capita. So essentially all this code for actually making the plot is identical. The only things that are changing is the reference that we're using. So is it in the measure, or in this case it's only the reference, and then the title, identifying what it is. So then we can take a quick peek at that as well. So if you look, things kind of scale down a little bit because this is now not based on on total beer production. It's based off beer production per person. That is 21 in the state. So Vermont, you're
killing it.
You're producing what, like 22 gallons per person per year? Bravo. Of craft beer only.
Yeah.
So then we do the same sort of thing, but now with economic impact. Both now total and per capita. Doing this with total number of craft breweries and craft breweries per capita. And then we're going to throw it into Patchwork to try to organize it together using this. So we're going to stack beer prod total above beer prod per capita, put that next to beer impact total over beer impact per capita. So this is the economic impact, and then put that next to breweries total and breweries total per capita, and then do a little bit of annotation where we're adding a title, craft beer and breweries in America, and setting the theme to be gray, just to kind of, I don't like that white background that much, and then setting the plot title text to be larger so that it's a little bit more clear. So let's run that. All right, that's not as pretty. There we go. All right, let me zoom out a little bit. And zoom.
Oh,
there we go. Oh, there we go. So yeah, so I thought this was just kind of a fun way to look at all the data that we pulled off here at the state level.
I wonder why it didn't gray out your legend.
It's because I didn't set the legend background element to be NA.
It's a rectangle piece, element rectangle or something. Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is just kind of an interesting way to look at all of this at once, and try to glean some information from this. So like California in total is almost always the brightest
Yeah.
star
Yeah, and,
across.
and Vermont actually across the top three, no, but on the bottom three, once you get to per capita, then Vermont really shines.
So is it that they're producing? So they're not producing a lot of beer, but they produce a lot of beer
Per
per person that lives there.
per person of drinking age, I suppose,
Yes.
per capita.
Yeah.
They do have amazing breweries in
Yeah.
Vermont.
Ooh.
Yeah, like incredible. What's the one that the Heady Topper beer is
Mm-hmm.
like one of the yeah, that's an amazing craft beer. So that's pretty interesting. Um,
Colorado has the biggest, or what looks like based on the per capita, some of the highest beer economic impact. So that those craft breweries in Colorado are doing work.
yeah,
They
same thing
do,
with Oregon. That one too.
yeah. Oregon's pretty big up there too. So basically, they're producing a fair amount of beer, but relative to the other states per capita, they're impacting the state immensely compared to the other craft breweries in the like it's all relative, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
but I think that's pretty cool. I mean, I've heard Colorado is pretty good beer, so there's
Yeah,
that.
well, yeah, mhm.
Yeah. So
That's
this
awesome. Super cool.
so this was fun, a fun way to kind of look at the data. I'm curious to see a who will pull this data and b what visualizations they come up with. So definitely do that. Definitely tag us. We'd be excited to see what y'all do. And so that was the main visualization. I spent a lot of time this week doing something that I thought would be fun. Narrator voice. It was not fun, and he spent way too much time on it. I was trying to use B splines, which is from the GG Force package. From and so what it would allow me to do is create basically a beer bottle, right? Like this. So Patrick and I talked about, at least I sent this to Patrick. I'm like, Patrick, does this look like a beer bottle? He's like,
It
kinda.
looks well. You know what? It looks like a beer bottle on your finished product. That right there looks like a jug. You know what? It looks like a growler. Like if I was gonna fill up a growler.
Here, I'll make it a growler for you. There you go. There's your
There it
growler.
is. The growler.
um, but yeah, so I was trying to do some stuff. You can see some code further down. It's a little bit weird. I'm trying to do some scaling, but California and like the top production states just threw the scaling so far off. The visualization I had in my head didn't come out, so I'm not going to talk through this. But you can go through, look at my code, and go, wow.
Just show it. Just show the final.
Okay.
I did think that it looked cool when it's all. It does look like beer bottles once you're done. Now that's pretty sweet. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so this is the top beer producing states: so California, Colorado, New York, Washington, Pennsylvania, Michigan. In production, this is they're ordered by the total number of craft breweries that exist. So California just has a silly amount of craft breweries. That kind of explains why they have the highest economic impact in production, is because they just have so many breweries. Pennsylvania, on the other hand, has about as many breweries as Washington, at least looking at the size of the bottle. So the size of the bottle is
Same as Michigan almost. Isn't it?
yeah, but the economic impact production is just insane.
Which is fascinating. I wonder. Oh, you know what? I wonder how much. Well, no. I was gonna say I wonder how much is down like by Philadelphia. Like I always tend to think of like craft beers as being like a big city thing, like people in big cities like California, Seattle.
We're snooty about our beer.
What's that?
We're snooty about our beer.
No, I just it's just like I don't know. It's like a wine bar. Like you find wine bars in big cities, and I think of like craft beers as like the same type of thing.
Yeah.
It's something that people just tend to gravitate towards on a Friday night. And I don't know, like, I mean, growing up, I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio. Like there wasn't like craft beer places to drink. Like you just go to the normal bar and everybody drinks Budweiser and Coors Light. It
Hey,
wasn't
nothing
until I
wrong with
moved
that.
in or New York City, or Seattle that you see that. So but Pennsylvania, yeah, it's crazy to me. Like I'm trying to think of what craft beers come out of there. I
I
don't.
don't know. If you know, comment below.
Let us,
Let
and
us know.
if you'd like to mail some to us, you can email us at tidy.explain@gmail.com and we could get you an address.
Yeah, we can show go sponsored by
Yeah.
your beer
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's powered by.
Yeah.
But cool. So this was fun to put together. B splines are a pretty cool thing. I hope to talk about them more in the future. Now that I understand them a little bit better. And with that, I think we'll call it here.
That's it.
So, as always, thank you for joining us. My name is Ellis Hughes. You can find me on Twitter at Ellis_Hughes. Yeah, that is correct.
Are you sure that was it? Yeah. And, and my name is Patrick Warden. You can find me on Twitter at OSPPatrick. And you can find both of us on Twitter at tidy_explain. Or you can hit us up on Gmail if with questions, comments, ideas for future posts, or an address to mail beer, tidy.explained@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you. Keep on exploring your world.